Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail, where you can in turn inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. I am your running host, Dean Thompson. Rolling into episode number 32. Joining me is, once again, Run for God founder, Mitchell Hollis.
Thanks for having me, Dean. Can you believe it's been 32 episodes?
32 episodes.
Crazy.
Seems like just yesterday. We were just getting started, along with the coronavirus.
Yeah, it's about to get cold again. We
Yeah.
started this in the cold, so
Yeah, that's good to see. I like cold. I like it for running. I don't like cold for everything else, but I like it for running. So, hey, have you ever felt like you're wasting your time doing good things? I mean, like you've done good things, but and you know they're not bad things, but you just feel like you're wasting your time. Sometimes God will use those moments to prompt us to be a little bolder, as we'll discover in this week's story. And I will share something I've written about looking backwards and forwards. This is an alert to all you worriers out there. And I know you're out there, and I know you're listening. You do not want to miss this one. We're going to start off by telling you who to vote for.
Easy, Dean.
Just kidding. You've probably had enough of that, right? Although, I will say, I always look for Jesus on the ballot.
Yep.
If I can find Jesus anywhere in the ballot, then I'm voting for him.
Now that would fix all of our problems.
It would. It absolutely would. So I look for the folks that seem to be closest to what Jesus is thinking, and that's the guy. That's the lady. That's the one. Yep. So, all right. Trivia question. We had a trivia question last week, and it was a good one. I don't know how many of you had to go out there and look this up. If anybody out there knew this one, congratulations. You are definitely a real runner.
I didn't know this one.
Name the guy who won the 1960 Olympic marathon and tell me what was crazy about that victory. And the answer to the question was Abibi Bikila. Abibi Bikila was an Ethiopian runner. We look at the Ethiopians and the Kenyans today and all those East Africans as just being, they must have always been around, but they weren't. At this time, Abibi Bikila was something different than the rest of the world. The rest of the world, the fastest marathoners were coming from the United States and Great Britain and other places in the country. New Zealand had some great runners. They were all over the world, but they weren't from East Africa for the most part.
I was like everybody else. I just thought they'd always been around. They were always at the front. And
yeah, go find some results from the 1950s and tell me how many you find.
Wow,
you won't find many.
It's interesting.
Yeah. He was also the first one to win back-to-back Olympic marathons. So the Olympic marathon started in 1896, and then he was the first one in 1960 to win, or 1964 is when he won his second one.
Right.
The crazy thing about it, though, and the reason why this question comes up is, here's what was crazy about it, was that he won this race running barefoot.
So he's the one that started this. The question that we get asked pretty often.
Yeah.
You know, are we... We've had some, I've actually ran across an instructor who, the barefoot craze came on, what was that, It's probably 7, 8, 9 years ago, where everybody was wearing the Vibram, running barefoot.
Yep.
And we had an instructor that was teaching this to their class, that you should run barefoot. And we know that that's not the right answer. Some people can get away with that. Most cannot.
Yeah.
So this guy's the one that started that. Huh?
That's the guy. So, what happened was he was in Rome for this race, and so he goes to this place, and he finds some new shoes.
Right.
And he purchases this pair of new shoes. I guess, I don't know if he'd never had a pair of running shoes before or what, but he bought these shoes. Well, he ran in them a little bit, and they were giving him blisters, and so he decided that it would be better to run barefoot than to get blisters from his shoes. And so, cobblestone streets and everything that he ran on there in Rome was that's interesting. Of course, he's not the only one. There was a lady named Zola Budd who ran for Great Britain. She was from South Africa, ran for Great Britain in the 1980s. who also ran barefoot, but she was on the track. I can understand it a little better on the track. You got good sure footing there. Anyway, the whole story of this race, actually, I knew who won, I knew what had happened and all that, but I didn't realize the ending of this race went this way. When he gets through with the race, of course, he's running with another guy up until 500 meters to go. They get basically to the stadium, and he goes, oh, the finish line must be close. So he just sprints away from this guy, beats him by like 24 seconds or something over the last 500 meters, just blew him away over this last 500 meters. He runs across the finish line, and he starts running in place and touching his toes. And he said that later they interviewed him, and he said, I feel like I could have run another 10 or 15 kilometers at that pace.
A little confidence.
Yeah.
Cockiness.
Yeah, he was one of those. Yeah. And we always say no one likes a show-off.
Right.
But in this case, that was wrong, because in Ethiopia, Bibi Bikila became a national hero at that point. So it was a big, big deal in Ethiopia. And today, this started this whole craze in Kenya and Ethiopia, where in East Africa, track and field and running is one of their biggest sports. It's not like around here where it's a minor sport. Over there, it's a major sport.
But it's also part of their way of life.
It is.
Especially the no shoe part. I have a friend who used to own a timing company called Zulu Racing, and the name Zulu come from that's a tribe in Africa, and they would do a mission trip every year in Africa. And while they were there, they would put on a little 5K in this village. I guess the village is Zulu, or the tribe is anyway in this little village. And I don't know if you've ever heard this story or not.
I don't think so.
But they would do this 5K, and they would take bibs and shoes. And, of course, they were a timing company, so, they wanted to do this race. And he said they would bring shoes, bibs, T-shirts, everything just like a race. Well, they would get all the people in this village to come sign up for this race. Well, running there, even if you're not a air quote runner, people run. They don't have cars like we do here, two in every garage, or they don't even have garages. And he said what was so crazy is some of these guys would come up and, they just looked like a runner when they walked up, but they've never ran competitively in their life. And they would hand them a pair of shoes, hand them a bib, line them up at the start. But he said the guys would just throw the shoes over the side and come through in sub 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And they've never ran competitively in their life, and they're like, not even breathing hard when they come through, but it's just kind of their way of life over there, and that's what they're used to. So,
well, Bibi Bikila is one of the forerunners for all of this, and he's got an interesting story. In 1952, he joined the Ethiopian Imperial Guard, which guarded the Emperor of Ethiopia. It was an elite force, and it was a pretty important thing. And he rose to the rank of captain. As we see with a lot of runners, they're very driven people, and I'm sure that he was the same way even before he became a big-time professional runner. Well, I guess in that time there were no professional runners. Anyway, he only ran a total of 16 marathons in his entire life. 2 of them were Olympic victories. 12 of the 16 that he ran were victories. His last 2 he didn't finish, and he only finished second in his first one. So he was pretty successful in the marathon. We like to talk about Eliud Kipchoge and how great he is and his running streak and all. This guy was pretty good.
Yeah, give him a run for his money, pun intended.
Yeah. But then he started having some injuries and some problems with that. And one other thing about him is that they now have an award. The New York Road Runners is an international recognized group, and they do a Bibi Bikila award every year, which is for those people who do a lot for running in East Africa, because he was the pioneer. Maybe without him, we don't have what we have today. It's funny. We were talking about how it's a way of life there. In Ethiopia and Kenya, between those two countries, there's probably 20 guys that would make the United States Olympic team that are sitting at home on Olympics Day. Isn't that crazy to think there's that many over there that are that fast? I mean, it's
and it's amazing. One thing we talked about Kipchoge. Lane and I watched a documentary on him. It was probably last year, right after the sub 2 hour thing, and just their culture is so much different than ours. You know, in the United States, we put the fastest American runners, really the fastest runners in the world, we kind of put them on this pedestal, and like they're superhuman, and we pay them all this money, and usually in other sports and cultures along with that comes a lifestyle that matches all that, which can be a bad thing.
Yeah.
But not for them. You know, I saw one but one statistic said about Kipchoge that he's probably worth close to $10 million. But in Africa, he still lives in Africa, wherever he's from.
Yeah.
He still lives there in that little village. And in that little village, they have a running club, which probably the guys in that running club it's exactly what you're talking about. They're incredibly, any one of them would win 90% of the races around the United States.
Yeah.
But they have this little club, and they all have chores to do at this little club. They have like a gym where they do a lot of their workouts and stuff, and it shows Kipchoge sweeping the floor. Very humble beginning. He still lives in a small hut with a grass roof, a thatch roof.
Wow.
And this is a guy that, by everybody's account nowadays, he's the best there is. And just the humble beginnings and the humble way of life. And he accredits a lot of his success to that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot we can learn from that culture over there that we've kind of lost touch with in the United States.
Well, you're not kidding. Yeah, going back to Bakila, you know, on March 22nd of 1969, he was paralyzed in a car accident. I mean, when he's this great athlete, and he did regain, you know, he was able to move his upper body, but he never was able to walk again. But he didn't quit. What he did was he competed in archery and table tennis after that. It was kind of the events that he was participating in were kind of the predecessors to the Paralympic Games we have today, which a lot of us look at as being and it's a great thing. So he wasn't just one of the forerunners in East Africa as far as running goes, but he was also one of the forerunners in Paralympic history too, if you look at it that way. So
that's just the definition of grit,
isn't it? Isn't it?
Most people would give up right there. You know, my career's gone. What I'm known for, my identity, to some degree, is gone. It would be easy to give up right there. I mean, there's. I read that in your notes here, and that's just, man, that's the definition of grit. It
is. And he died at the age of 41, obviously very, very young, in 1973. He died basically from complications from all the surgeries and the things that he had from the car accident. Had a big state funeral. There are now buildings and all sorts of things in Ethiopia named after him because he was such a hero. Mm-hmm. And all of this from a guy who just loved to run, and he was just a pioneer. It's a really cool story.
Wow.
Hey, we have some Run Club exclusives out there, things that only Run Club people can get access to. And we are about to embark on an ambitious effort. And what is that?
I think this is probably our most ambitious thing we've ever done. And I think people are going to be excited about this. We've kind of floated the teaser out there to our Run Club Facebook page we were kind of getting everybody's pulse on it, and man, people were excited.
Yeah.
But as you know, we've always had the 5K challenge. At one point, we had a 10K to half marathon challenge, which we kind of pulled back from that, and that was for a variety of reasons. There was some confusion on different things, and that was the same time when we rolled out the first Run Club. You know, if you can't tell, we've learned some things over the past 10 years, and
sometimes the hard way.
So we pulled some of that back. Well, we rolled Run Club back out this January, and we think we've hit a home run with this format.
Yeah.
So we still have all of those people out there, thousands and thousands, over 200,000 people have been through the 5K challenge, and over 5,000 communities around the world. But there's always that nagging, I shouldn't say nagging, it's not a nagging comment, but the question, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
What's next? And Run Club is filling that void for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there's always that what's next in training.
Yeah.
And so this January, we're going to begin the Couch to Marathon
Wow.
challenge. And that may sound daunting when you first hear it. It does to me. I'm going to do this. You know, I've kind of been removed from running for about a year now and been walking a lot and things like that. But I told my wife, you know, a month or so ago, I said, I've got to sign up for a race. You know, for me, that's the biggest motivation, is to sign up for a race.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to sign up for a marathon. Well, if I'm going to sign up for a marathon, let's all do it. Let's do it as a family. Well, let's get all our friends around. Well, let's just go ahead and get the whole run club. Let's all do this together, because it can be done.
Oh, yeah.
And it will be done.
Oh, yeah.
But so what we're going to do, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start in January. And we're going to start the Couch to Marathon journey. Well, all this is we're going to string together all of our challenges that we've written. You know, everybody knows of the 5K challenge. Actually, the 10K to Marathon challenge is pretty much already done.
Yeah.
We just haven't ever rolled that out. Well, we're going to begin to roll that out. So we're going to string together the 5K, the 10K, the 13.1, and the 26.2 challenges. And do the math. It works out perfectly. We're going to do a 5K in April. And so if you're a member of Run Club, we're going to invite you to Dalton, the home of Run for God, to run at the mill for free.
Great race.
For free.
Yep.
Did you hear that?
Free 90 free.
Free 90 free. If you sign up for this journey, this is going to be our reward to you. Welcome to the journey. We're going to invite you to Dalton, Georgia to run this race for free. So we got a 5K in April. That's the 5K challenge. Same program that you've seen. Same program that you know.
And what about that person who can't come to Dalton? They're still welcome to run their own 5K, correct?
You can run a 5K anywhere.
Right.
But so the 5K is in April. That's 12
Right.
weeks. We're going to take a break between every challenge. So we're going to have a week off.
Okay.
Everybody needs that break.
Yeah.
If not for physically, for mentally.
That's right.
You need that break.
Yep.
1 week later, we're starting the 10K challenge. So that puts you in July to run a 10K. 12 weeks. Lands you in July. You're going to run a 10K. We don't have a 10K, so we're saying find a 10K in your area. And all these details, as of today, are on the website, on the Run Club website. You'll probably get emails and everything. It's going to be a big push. But you'll find a local 10K in your area or somewhere. It could be destination, and you run a 10K in July. You take a week off. 1 week later, you start up on the half marathon challenge. All along the way, Dean and I are going to be walking you through these challenges. Every Sunday night, we're going to have class time. It's going to be online, but we're going to be live. And we're going to be walking you through this process. So, October, best month of the year to run.
Oh, yeah.
October, you're going to find a local half marathon, either local or somewhere that you want to travel to run one. We don't have one. And then in January, the best part. So 1 week later in October, let me back up. 1 week later in October, you're going to finish that half marathon. You're going to take a week off.
Yep.
Go enjoy the leaves, whatever. And then 1 week later, you're going to start the marathon challenge, which is going to take us to January of 2022. Well, guess what race competes every January that's probably one of the most famous races of all? It was my first marathon. It was my wife's first marathon. It's the only reason my wife ran her first marathon.
I know.
The Disney Marathon. We're going to graduate this program together at the Disney Marathon.
How fantastic
now,
is that?
It's probably, it's a lot of people, but it's one of the greatest races I've ever ran. I mean, it was my first marathon, but Disney just knows how to do things. Now, I know there's a lot of, Disney can be polarizing. I'm going for the race. It's a great race. And the best of all, I want us all to come together. No matter where you live in the country, you've got a year to plan this. You've got you've got a year and 2 months to plan this from this point.
Yeah.
Let's all come together and graduate together. We'll have some activities down there that we do together. You know, we may all go out to eat one night together. We'll meet at the same corral together. You know, right now we're working, Holly's dealing with Disney right now to see what kind of deals we might be able to get for running as a group, being that we're running under the umbrella of a nonprofit. So those kind of details will be coming later. But the dates are set. The dates are set on how this is going to go down. Now, we've went ahead and we're gonna put the link out there to this website, but we've kind of went into what all's included, all the education. You got the free 5K in April. You got the Sunday evening class time with Dean and I. You've got access to exclusive gear. I mean, rest assured, we're going to have some marathon gear here.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got the greatest Facebook accountability group that's ever been made. The training plans, we talked about that. You've got personal coaching from our good buddy right here, RRCA certified coach, Dean Thompson. Access to the team excursions at the marathon. And then a detailed plan of exactly what to do. You know, I was talking to a friend. Actually, when you pulled in my driveway to pick me up, I was talking to a friend of mine, Dean Stamper. Dean was actually one that I kind of dared 4 or 5 years ago to do an Ironman. Dean is not a small guy. He's a bigger guy. And he's not a person you look at and think, he can do an Ironman. He's just not, honestly. He would tell you that. But we put a system in place that was not only a training plan, but an accountability plan. Mm-hmm. There was somebody there to walk him through that plan.
Yeah.
Dean and Wendy both finished that Ironman. They were on the front page of the Chattanooga Times for completing that Ironman. But what we were talking about today was you can go a lot of places and find a training plan for a marathon. Training plans are really not rocket science. But especially for the marathon, the most important thing about getting to the marathon is not the training plan. It's the accountability and the motivation and the inspiration. It's having people doing it with you. You know, I told him, I said, it's to train for a marathon by yourself really kind of stinks, because when you get done with that 16-mile run that we'll probably be doing next December, it stinks when you get done and there's nobody to talk to about it.
Yeah.
Because you want to talk about these things, and we've got a great infrastructure to talk about it. Can you do it? Absolutely.
No question.
Gay Coker, all of you know, or many of you know Gay on our staff. She's already committed to this, her and her husband. I've committed to it. I'm pretty sure you've committed to it, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So our whole staff is going to do it. But we've also just kind of hit some questions. Let me answer the biggest question. How much does it cost for Run Club members? It's free.
Free nanny free.
Free. If you're a Run Club member, all you've got to do is go register for this. Doesn't cost you a dime. Run Club costs 27 cents a day. You're not going to go any. You're going to be hard pressed to go buy a training plan for that amount of money, much less everything that we're sending along with it. Kind of go through some of the questions, Dean. We put some questions on the website.
They will have to pay the entry fee for the marathon. But,
right.
Other than the training,
the marathon, the travel, all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's what you want to make out of it.
But the accountability system itself, the training group, the plans, free. The everything.
Free to Run Club members.
Free to Run Club members.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what happens to that person who says, I don't know that I can run a marathon? I mean, you just kind of answered that with Dean. I mean, there was a guy who you would think couldn't run an Ironman track. You wouldn't think Dean could have run a marathon at that point, let alone
a marathon
swam 2.4 miles and rode 120 miles before that, 112 miles before that, or 116 in Chattanooga.
But yeah, my rebuttal to that, because we hear that all the time, not just about marathons, but just about running in general. I can't do that.
Right. With very few exceptions.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say very few exceptions, anybody can run a marathon.
Yep.
Now, are you going to run a 2-hour marathon? With very few exceptions, nobody can do that. But with very few exceptions, anybody can run a marathon. Should you get checked by a physician, if you're in a risk category that you need to get checked, absolutely. Be smart. But most people can't complete a journey like marathon training, not because of the physical, but because they can't muster the mental fortitude that it takes to do this.
Yep.
So much of marathon training is mental. It's not physical.
Yeah.
It is not physical. And that's why friends, accountability, a training group, and encouragement are so important. And that's why we're here. That's why we're biting off this challenge, because, number one, I want to do it. Yep. Number two, I want our team to do it. I want my friends to do it. I've seen the benefits from people who walk through this. And I'm not talking about the physical benefits. Are you going to lose weight? Yes. Are you going to feel better? Yes. But the confidence that it gives you
Amen.
For life.
Yep.
If you can complete a marathon, you can do a lot of things that you didn't think you could do.
Amen.
And it bleeds over to every area of your life.
Yeah. So how many days a week will people have to commit to in order to carry this out?
Well, if you've been through the 5K challenge, it's 3. Starts off with 3. Now, as we progress through the year, it will start to increase from 4 to 5. I think 5 in our plan is the most that you will run.
Yep.
And some of those days are just easy days.
Right.
The biggest thing I warn people to not do is to look at or to make the statement, I can't run a marathon. Well, guess what? I can't either today. Can I get to a 5K in 12 weeks? Yes. To everybody listening to this, chances are you've ran a 5K. If you can run a 5K, you can run a marathon. No question about it.
Yeah.
It's got to be done the right way. It's got to be done safely. It's got to be done over time. It's got to be not too much too soon, which is critically important in this process. But with very few exceptions, anybody listening to this can run a marathon.
That's right. So this takes place, I think you mentioned, Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Right? What if I can already run a 5K or a 10K? Can I still join the group?
Yeah. This is the people that's going to make this incredible.
Yeah.
If you're already a runner, if you already call yourself a runner and you wear that badge proudly, then you're one of two people. You're either already a coach, a Run for God coach, or you're a potential coach.
Yeah.
Now, the beauty of what we're going to do starting in January is we're going to take care of a lot of the heavy lifting. You and I are going to teach these classes. We're going to take all the questions. We need people to facilitate this in their communities. And you say, well, it's all online, so what do we need facilitators in communities for? Because there is a lot of people out there. There are a lot of people out there who love the idea of running. And what is everyone's, I haven't seen a study that shows this, but I'm just going to say it. What's everybody's number one goal when they say, I want to be a runner? I want to run a what?
A marathon.
A marathon.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's a very daunting task. So we need people who can go out in their communities and say, hey, we're doing this couch to marathon program with Run for God. Come join us. Really, all you're going to have to do is maybe lead a group run every week, just to have a place for people in your community to come to and say, hey, I'm part of this. You can talk about that week's lesson. Maybe you have a group run on Monday night where you talk about the lesson from Sunday night and you head out on your group run. But if you're a runner, then you have credibility automatically in your communities. Yeah. So we want to recruit people who have this on their bucket list, which is a lot of people across this country. But more important than that, people may come to run a marathon, and that's okay. But what we know is during this process, they're going to be introduced to Jesus Christ.
And that could be all the difference.
That's the main goal of this whole process. That's the main goal of Run for God, is to point people to Jesus Christ through the sport of running. And how better to do that than through training for a marathon?
So we're encouraging people to go out and get their friends involved, everybody they know, to get them involved. It's always good. If you're out there by yourself and you can't facilitate a group, or you don't have a group to facilitate, whatever, and you're just in a circumstance where if you can get one other person,
sure,
one friend, who you guys can kind of train together and help each other out and boost each other up when maybe what we're doing is not quite enough, you just need that one more person just to make sure that you show up for that long run. That would be great. What about time? Because for a lot of people, the number one reason I hear for why people don't run is, I don't have time.
Well, you're famous for saying you make time for the things that are important to you. You know, some of the world's greatest CEOs are runners, because they understand what I just said a few minutes ago, that you learn so much about life through marathon training. You learn discipline and dedication. You learn to budget your time wisely. There's so many things that you learn through this sport and through these programs that we're going to reveal to you from couch to marathon, that you understand the benefit of discipline yourself to do something that many say they can't do, or maybe you said you can't do. There's humongous breakthroughs that come when you do something that maybe your whole life you thought, I can't do this. Well, leave it to me and Dean to show you how.
Yeah.
Because we know that you can. Like I said, with very few exceptions, and if you think you're one of those exceptions, then you need to get checked by a physician first.
Yeah.
Because if it's just, I can't do it, then that doesn't hold water with me and you.
Nope.
Never has.
Nope.
So, yes, you find time to do what is important.
Right.
So what's it going to be? Is it going to be Netflix starting in January, or is it going to be going for a run? I know which one is going to benefit you more.
There's no question about that one, especially in this day and time. So people who aren't Christians, they're free to join too, right?
Absolutely. We Run for God is a faith-based organization, but we love all people. We love all runners, and that includes anybody who wants to join us.
And if a family wants to join, they can do that together, correctly? You got a husband and wife, and they want to do this thing, and they want to do it together. Do they need two separate accounts?
No. Run Club, we encourage it's for you and your immediate family. Obviously, we're going to send out for the free things like the Run at the Mill free registration. We're going to send out one of those per account. But the Run Club itself is for the immediate family. Let me back up and say one thing I didn't say. Along with that free entry to Run at the Mill, we're going to do something. We don't know what yet, but we're going to have some kind of get-together Friday night before that race. That's really giving Holly and Gay some heartburn because they're so busy getting ready for that race. So me and you might wind up having to cook and barbecue and set tables and all that. But we're going to have something on Friday night before Run at the Mill, and it's going to be free.
Yeah.
So I can't stress enough that for $9.97 a month, 27 cents a day, you're going to get world-class training.
Yep.
And I say that confidently. Am I a world-class coach? No. But I know how to motivate, and we know the principles that it takes to get you to do something that you never thought you could, and you will be so glad at the end that you did it.
Amen. So where do they go to find out more information about how to register at Disney and what the Disney Marathon looks like and all that good stuff?
We will put a link on this podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast, go to the show notes, and we will have the link there. If you're watching this on YouTube, look below. The link will be there. And there will also be a tab on Run for God Run Club where you can find out more information. Now, you can't sign up to take it until you become a member of Run Club. Once you're a member, then you can log in and you can sign up to take it. Everybody will need to sign up. It is free to Run Club members, but everybody will need to sign up because there will be different correspondence through all of next year to those people as opposed to the people who are just in Run Club and not taking part in the Couch to Marathon.
Yeah.
So, be sure to go to Run for God Run Club. runforgod.com. Find the tab that says Couch to Marathon. Sign up there. Look in the show notes of this. It'll be everywhere. Starting today, it'll be everywhere.
All right, folks. Couch to Marathon in 1 year. The epic journey begins.
I dare you to sign up.
If your teen is into rock and metal music that makes your ears bleed and your grandmother clutch her pearls, we can help. If your spouse yearns for music from the old days and wants to relive the music of their glory years, we can handle that. If you need a break from the day to spend time with God and recognize His goodness, we'd love to be a part of that. Whether it's rock and metal, classic songs from decades past, or heartfelt worship music, J Radio has you covered. Sign up for an account at jradio.com and download the app in your app store to start listening for free today.
All right, we're back, and just recently, we gave away a free membership, free 3 months to J Radio on this very show when we were talking about our trivia questions. So, again, world's greatest digital music platform. We're so thankful to J Radio for the resources that they provide to us in order for us for this thing to go well. I think the audio quality is great, and it's not because of anything you or I do. It's because they make us sound okay. So they're miracle workers here. So don't forget that if you have questions and things about training, about this podcast, if you've got questions about something running related, if you've got a story you want to share, whatever, you can send messages to dean@runforgod.com. If you don't know about us, then you can go find out more about us at runforgod.com, www.runforgod.com to learn more. Or you can go to runforgodrunclub.com, either one. So you can find out more about who we are and what we are if you've just happened upon this podcast. So don't forget, we'd love to hear your story. We're about to share somebody's story. It's a great story. We'd love to hear yours. Everybody has a story. We want to hear yours. So go to either runforgod.com or runforgodrunclub.com and submit your story. If you're a Run Club member, we're going to get you right to the head of the line, and we'll get you on pretty quick. So there. So this story this week, I have taken some liberties with this one. This story was a very short story, and when I picked it up, I really thought that it just needed a little bit more. So the guy who wrote this story, his name is Jason Uptegraw. He is from Blue Mounds, Wisconsin. And I hope, Jason, that with what I've done with this, it is okay. I try to leave these stories as close to the original as possible. But this one, I just had to add several sentences to this. So I hope it's okay. The story is entitled, Run Your Own Race. 4 years ago, I was on a water mission in El Salvador. We were there to dig wells to provide water for people in El Salvador who needed it. Things were not going as planned, and it was hard to take in. In the moment, it is always hard to understand why God allows us to struggle so much. During this difficult time, I kept referring back to 1 Corinthians 9:24. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful in completing a well. As a matter of coincidence, when we returned home, Father's Day was the next day, and without knowing my readings, my wife and kids had given me a shirt that read 1 Corinthians 9:24, Run your race. That was curious. What was God trying to tell me? And he gave me an answer. It was at that point I decided to use my running to raise funds for the next well in Nicaragua. In 6 months, I ran 1,000 miles and raised $1,800. God was providing. But on one of those runs, I prayed that I wasn't feeling connected with this trip to Nicaragua. I would go wherever he wanted, but I felt like I needed him to tell me. The next day, I awoke to a message from a friend that explained that a trip opened in El Salvador that same week. He wanted to know if I was willing to commit. if so, he would go too. Without hesitation, it was a yes. And to El Salvador we returned. God had answered. Everything about the trip was from God. After we finished the well, the people of the village placed paper crowns on our heads at the dedication ceremony. It was then that I read 1 Corinthians 9:25 one more time and realized what God had been trying to tell me all along. I kept that crown in my Bible to remind me that there is victory in all of us. I run thousands of miles a year, and I know each and every one of them is for the glory of Christ. What a great story from Jason Updegraw. You know, we've talked before about bathing our efforts in prayer, and this is a good example of a time when somebody, he could just feel God telling him this isn't, there's something not quite right here, and sometimes God just wants us to ask. He knows, and he could give us an answer without us asking, but he wants us to go say, but God, I don't, this doesn't feel right.
Help me out here. I read this 3 times before we came up here. Maybe I'm missing it. What was God telling him? I feel like I feel like he said it twice, that God was telling him something. Maybe I'm disconnected, and maybe this is why we need to talk about this some before we come on there. But I didn't find, it's a great story. I love the story. But I didn't find what God was telling him. He alluded to it, but I don't think he ever gave me the answer.
Well, reading between the lines, I feel like what he was saying is that we should always be focused on all the things that we talk about, the prayer and all of the things that when we do something, we don't just do it. And it almost felt like what he was saying was that first well they dug was just doing it. And that he realized at some point in time, God gave him this running gift, and that he should use this running gift, and he used it, and he raised this money. And then
so it was confirmation of what he had done was the right path then.
He was kind of on the right path, but then God wanted him to be more focused, and so God kind of prompted him to pray and say, where do you want me to go? Because we've got this trip planned over here, but it doesn't feel right. And so God gave him this answer to say, yeah, that's not the right place to go. I need you over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think about the amount of time that we spend in prayer, because that's what we measure things by in our society. We think about the amount of time we spend doing things as to just how fervent we are about something, right?
Right.
But I know people who run 12 miles a week that are really passionate about running.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we all know that person, right?
Yeah.
Who's just crazy about it, but they just don't run that much, but they really love it. And I think prayer is the same way. I don't think God is after big, long prayers. And I mean, there's a verse in the Bible that talks about that, how these Pharisees would stand on the corners with their showiness and say these big, long prayers with these big words and stuff. It's not what God's looking for.
God says, go in your closet.
He said, and he's looking for the earnestness.
Right.
Just like in this case where Jason said, this doesn't feel right. God, what am I missing here? And God told him.
And it was good that he recognized that, because how many times do we do things and prepare things and we say, okay, God bless this.
Yep.
God doesn't want that.
Mm-hmm.
God, like David Hendricks always said, find where God's working and go there. Don't ask God to come do what you're wanting to do. That's not how this works. That's not how this relationship works. So I got that part that, he finally submitted to or submitted to God and say, okay, whatever your plan is. And then boom, the next morning it shows up.
Yeah.
And how many times? Yeah, it happens a lot.
It does happen a lot. And a lot of times we think that, digging wells in a third world country, obviously that's a good thing, right? Obviously. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out I'm doing good stuff when I do that. But as I alluded to at the beginning of this podcast, sometimes doing good stuff isn't exactly what God wants us to do.
Can lead us away from Christ.
That's right. That's right. Scripture passage, 1 Corinthians 9:24, that he shares. That he didn't share the actual passage, so we're going to share the passage here. Do you not know that in a race all runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Never forget the first time I heard this. Of course, I've been a runner my whole life, and so I remember I was a runner by the time I heard this for the first time, and I thought, that's saying that only one person gets the prize? Because that's what it sounds like, right? When you just for those of us, and I was a kid when this happened, but it's important to know that Paul is not saying it's a contest to get to heaven, right?
Right.
But he is saying that we should want to be better than everybody else around us from the standpoint of being a Christ follower. So we look around us, we see the world around us, we want to be better than the world that's around us, and follow Christ much more closely than the world around us does. It's not the goal that we have to outdo others to get to heaven, but it is the goal that we should want to do those extra things that make that big of a difference to God. That we should want to pray more and to pray more fervently. We should want to help more people that's inside of our sphere of influence. We should want to do those things, and that's what I think Paul's getting at here is we should want to get that prize, and that prize is doing all I can. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Second scripture passage, 1 Corinthians 9:25, the one right after it. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. The first part of that verse is really important. The people who participated in these games that Paul is alluding to here, they had strict diets, they had these training regimens, they were really, really strict on themselves in their training, and that's important because as runners we know this. We have to subdue our bodies with our minds. We often let our minds control what our bodies do. So when we're too tired to go run, that's us allowing our bodies to control what we know we should do. There's obviously a ton of things out there from a moral standpoint that our bodies get in the way of doing what God would have us to do. But our body has to be made to serve the mind. And how do you do that? You do that through strict training. You do that through picking up that book and reading those Bible verses and understanding that putting our faith in Him is much more important than allowing our bodies to control what we do, what our minds do.
So I wasn't giving you the silent treatment right there. You went through two verses and I didn't say a word. It's because I wanted you to read them both. I had we do our quiet time every night as a family, and it's funny that these two verses just popped up. I'm sure it's a coincidence, but that's not what I mean. It's there are no coincidences. Anyway, so my 17-year-old son Lane, he can ask some pretty deep questions sometimes. You know this.
Oh yeah.
And he was struggling the other night with the concept of storing your treasure in heaven. And when we got on my 13-year-old son was about asleep by the time I got done with this conversation because we just kept going back and forth. And I'll say up front, I don't have the answer to this. And we're actually probably going to go to breakfast with my pastor here in the next few weeks just to talk about this concept. But Lane's really intrigued about it, so I wanted to go with it. I want to kind of flush this out. And I don't think we ever come to and maybe we won't ever know on this side of glory, but he was struggling with the concept of storing your treasure in heaven. And I think where some of his struggle is we tend to put this concept in an earthly context, that's the reason when you put these verses in here, it really caught my eye because it kind of goes to this concept of run so that you get the prize. Well, we know the prize is not here on earth. The prize is in heaven. It's storing that treasure in heaven. They do it to get a crown. That's putting our treasure in heaven, and you get a crown that will last forever. So that crown is in heaven. But Lane's question was, does it matter the motive behind that? And what he was asking was, should our motive to be to store our treasure in heaven or to please God? And doing things that produce treasure in heaven is biblical, and it pleases God.
Yeah.
So is it wrong for that to be our motive? Is it wrong to do things to store treasure in heaven? Is it wrong for that to be your motive rather than pleasing God?
See, I don't think I think they're connected completely.
Yeah, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think it's kind of the same thing, but he was pulling that, and I got where he was coming from it.
Yeah.
Because he talked about, in heaven there is no selfishness, there is no, all these different things. But can you have the motive of just doing things to store treasure in heaven? I say no. I say that comes because it's the chicken and the egg thing.
I agree. Yeah.
But it was just it was a really fascinating conversation because Lane loves to debate.
And I can hear Lane doing it because he's done that with me before. He won't let something go until you give him what he feels like is a satisfactory answer, and I love that about Lane.
And we didn't come to a satisfactory answer, and I hate to do this, but I said some things you just have to accept because
and we
in
talked
his
about that
mind,
last week.
In Lane's mind, he's thinking. I mentioned, we talked about the treasures in heaven. Is heaven going to be a different experience for me than Billy Graham? Is heaven going to be a different experience for me versus Paul? I don't know that I know the answer to that, but if it is, that will be okay. If it's not, that will be okay. But when you read those scriptures, store your treasure in heaven, it sounds like we put it in earthly context. Like, I'm going to have a bigger house in heaven. That's not what it's talking about.
No, and I think that where we get hung up on this is a single word. It's the word treasure.
Right.
Because we have an earthly definition of what treasure means.
Right.
But I also think about how when we talk about someone we love, we talk about them being a treasure to us. Well, that's a person. That's not a thing. That's a person.
Right.
And treasure can have so many treasured memories. We talk about treasured memories. Treasure can have so many different meanings. But I think we automatically we see this pirate's chest of gold open up
exactly
with stuff flowing out of it.
Earthly context.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to do some more digging on that. That really fascinated me.
Yeah.
The thinking of a 17-year-old never ceases to amaze me.
Maybe next week we'll come back and we'll have a better answer for that. Who knows?
Yeah, but we may not have an answer.
And
if you have an answer listening to this, if you can point me to scripture or to commentary, that I would love to know, because Lane and I are not done with this conversation.
Yeah,
I
send us
promise you he's not going to let it go. Nor should he. I mean, he's curious, and it's curiosity in a healthy way.
Yeah.
He just wants to understand, but at the end of the day, there's some things we won't understand.
I'll tell you what, I love curiosity, and one of the things that I like to do is I like to listen to the other side. I like to listen to non-Christians make an argument for why maybe they don't think there's a God, or whatever their thing is. And then I like to go to the source, to the Bible, and I like to really study that thing. Not so that I can argue with them so much, but so that I can have peace of mind that, okay, they just put up a pretty good argument. But I can feel good knowing that the truth lies in the truth is important, and that the truth is that I'm headed in the right direction.
Right.
Yeah. Question 1, are you running the race that is only for you? God has a specific plan for all of us, and we know those plans are good. I mean, it tells us that. Jeremiah 29:11 is one of the most popular verses in the Bible. So we know that. We know God has a plan. We know it's for our good, and yet we still struggle with doing what that is. Why is that so hard, you think?
We say it all the time. I mean, no good thing comes easy. No good thing comes free. the best things in life come as a result of a struggle. And struggle comes in many forms.
Yeah.
But the best things in life come from a struggle or from a process.
Yeah.
And
I think sometimes we don't have a real clear calling. We don't. We think maybe we heard God's voice saying we need to do this, but maybe that's our own conscience saying this is what I really want to do. And sometimes that's hard. If somebody had told me 15 years ago that you're going to be doing stuff, you're going to be talking to and about running and runners all the time, every day of your life, I would have said, no, probably not.
Right.
Because I would have thought that would be selfish of me to do that, right? I really would have. But today I look at where I am and what I do, and I think, how stinking blessed am I to be able to do what I'm doing. But it's hard to look at things and to know, is that my desire or is that God's will? Because sometimes they're the same and sometimes they're not, right? I think that causes a cloud sometimes. Are you afraid to take the path less traveled?
It's I'm not afraid, no. I'm kind of a trailblazer.
Yeah, you've never been afraid to go down a path.
But it is hard. And when you say the path less traveled, I put that in a spiritual context and the Christian life context. And it's hard because the world in general does not take that path. The path of living right, living for Christ, doing what's right, doing what we say, and they'll ridicule you, and at a minimum, they'll treat you differently because you take the path less traveled. And many times it's even your family.
Yeah.
And it's subtle things, but it does weigh on you over time, and that's why I think it's so important that, number one, you have people around you who think like you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have that. That is the body. That's what Christ talks about when he talks about the body of believers and edifying each other. You got to have that, because many times it's the little things. It's you and I were talking about raising kids on the way up here. Raising kids to be in a godly way is hard.
It is.
Doing what you feel like God is convicting you, whether it's, cell phone versus no cell phone, curfew versus no curfew.
Well, and
expectations.
It's not just you and the things that you do as a parent, but that you're causing extra friction on your child than they have to have. And that's hard.
Sure. It's my kids have Lane is the only one that drives, and he has a 10 o'clock curfew. Most of Lane's friends do not have that curfew.
Mm-hmm.
And the easy thing for me, and I'm not saying your child should have a 10 o'clock curfew. That's for me and my family, that's his curfew. The easy thing for me to do would be to say, I'll just get home whenever.
Yeah.
But in my deepest pit of my convictions, I know that that's not the right thing to do. The easiest thing for me to do would have been when my kids were 5 years old to handle my phone as a pacifier.
Yeah.
For me and my family, that was not the right way to do it. I expect a lot out of my kids because God expects a lot out of us.
Yeah.
And train up a child in the way they should go, and when they were older they will not depart, is in the Bible for a reason. It's our responsibility to walk this narrow road and lead by example. Does that mean that they will never be the prodigal son or the prodigal child? No. The prodigal son story is in the Bible for a reason. But handling money, over the past years, Holly and I, we've tried to take a biblical route to handling money, making church a priority. That is a concept that is fleeing more and more in our society. People are Christians, but they don't make church a priority. Does that mean that I'm at church every single Sunday? No. but it is a priority in my life. And I'm not just going to be laid up on the couch saying, it's not that important. You know, so many principles that we're to follow as believers constitute the path less traveled.
Yeah. But
is it easy? Another verse that's in the Bible for a reason is pick up your cross daily.
Yeah.
And follow me. That is a picture of struggle, not of a life of ease.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, no, I'm not afraid. Is it easy? No, it's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. And most people will say, I'm willing to go down that path until you have to take those first few steps. And then it's hard. And don't get me wrong. I'm not denigrating anybody who has a hard time going down those paths, because it is hard. It's truly, truly hard. I probably never would have left my corporate job unless the circumstances that forced me to leave, because it was too hard for me to go down that path. So I get it when that's a problem and that's hard. I argued with God for a year before he made the circumstances such that it was possible. That path seemed like it was too difficult for me, but it wasn't in the long run. And now I know that, and you know what it does now is it makes me look at the next path that looks like it's hard. It looks a little easier to me. So I think the more you go down these road less traveled areas, the easier it is to take the next road that's even less traveled.
Right.
Yeah. Last question. Can you hear God's whispers for you?
I can if I'm listening.
Yeah. And you have to be listening. So how do we know? How do we listen?
Sometimes you have to get quiet. And I mean that.
Literally and figuratively.
Literally. I was looking for the word literally.
Yeah.
I kept thinking figuratively. Yeah, I mean that literally.
Yeah.
You know, in a world where there is no quietness.
Yeah.
There is no quietness in the world around us, so we have to intentionally make quietness. I try to do it in the mornings, sitting at my desk. But even that's hard. My phone will buzz, my email will pop up, a kid will yell, whatever. I mean, good. I'm not saying these are bad distractions, but they're distractions nonetheless. So sometimes we do have to just get alone. And then when I do get alone and I get out all the distractions, a lot of times the distraction is me.
Yeah.
Because I'll be whining and I'll be doing all the talking. And sometimes I sense God just saying, be quiet.
Yeah.
How many times do you want to say that to people that just keep talking? Well, a lot of times we're that way with God.
You made me think about something that happened just this past week with my wife. I walked out back.
She told you to be quiet, didn't she?
Well, she thinks that a lot more often than she says it because she's a kind lady.
Debbie's very restrained.
She is. But anyway, she was working out in our backyard, and I was going to go out there. We needed to do some work out there, and both needed to be doing some things. And so I walk out there, and I've got my big Bluetooth speaker because I'm going to listen to music while I'm doing what I do. Because that's whatever I do, I usually have on some headphones or something. And I'm either listening to a podcast or I'm listening to some music. That's just because we feel like we need a distraction, right? And when I walked out, she saw the speaker in my hand, and she goes, don't turn that up real loud. I was really enjoying the peace and quiet. And it was so wise, in the moment. I thought, wow, that's but I turned it on anyway.
And then she said, Dean, be quiet.
No, I kept it down really low. I did keep it down low. And then you know what I did? I heard her singing some of the songs. So, which, that goes both directions. So anyway, I just think I think we've got to be close to him to hear him, because God does often whisper, and we can't hear a whisper if you're not right next to somebody.
Right. We pray for billboards. That's what I pray for, is billboards. God will get our attention in many, many ways. But sometimes the most profound times that he wants to talk to us, it's a still small voice.
Yep.
Sometimes it's loud. Sometimes it's a billboard.
Or a 2x4.
Or a 2x4. Or a health scare, or a car wreck, or he gets our attention in many, many ways. But some of the most profound times that he gets our attention is in the quietness. And we've got to be listening for those.
We do.
Because in the quietness, he's not that hard to hear.
That's right.
He's just not. You know, in the loud times, it's easy to get him confused with us or other things or fluke thought, whatever. But in the quietness, it's not an audible voice. I'm not saying that, but many times it's very clear.
Well, just like in this case, in this story.
Exactly.
You know, he wasn't sure. There was too much going on, and he kind of said, "Okay, God." He got quiet, said, "Tell me what you want me to do." And he gave him an answer inside of 12 hours.
Yeah. A lot to learn there.
Yep.
There is power in people's stories.
It's a challenging time. What do you do when everything you believe about God is being tested and God doesn't look like the good father that he says he does?
You've got layers and layers and layers of hate in your heart. It takes God to clean it out.
Your story can help encourage others around the country, just like these stories have. You can walk through a simple process of sharing your story with the Big Share app. Download the Big Share app in your app store to start sharing hope with others.
All right, so we are back, and it is time for Dean's Thoughts, and that is a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith. You know, we've talked not too long ago about how sometimes the only way out is through. That was a Robert Frost quote. Well, sometimes the only way to see forward is to look backwards, and that's what this one's called. It's called Looking Backward and Forward. What do you remember about your running? I mean, when you look back, what fills your mind? Do you think about a race you ran 10 years ago? Do you think about fun moments, the accomplishments, or the breakthroughs? Or do you think about an injury that sidelined you for months? Or maybe you think about that race you didn't finish. Your answer could give great insight into who you are as a runner. I don't know if you've noticed, but running is hard. It doesn't matter how positive you are, you still recognize the difficulty inherent in our sport. But here's the question. Are you amplifying that difficulty, or are you minimizing it? As a coach, I see a lot of people who fret over everything from the upcoming race to the socks they should wear. While it is fine, even essential, to think about all that must be done to reach a goal, you can't be consumed by it, especially if all your thoughts are negative. And make no mistake, worrying is negative. It's good to look forward to plan for anything that could come your way, but worry is not part of the plan. If you thought about the negative things when I asked those first few questions, you're almost surely a worrier. Even if you thought of positive running times, it doesn't mean that you're out of the woods, though. How much do you worry about things related to running? Most of us spend some time on negative thoughts, but you can limit those thoughts of what might be by thinking of already was. Now, what do I mean by that? To have a positive vision of the future, it helps if you look at the good things from the past. I like to remind athletes of the road they have traveled to get where they are today. If you've been training for a half marathon and you're worried about being able to perform on race day, simply look back to the road you have already traveled. Chances are you've had some ups and downs during your training. Focus on the good runs and the workouts that went well. Think about the overall picture and the amount of work you've put into your training. The way most coaches like to say it is this: trust your training. If you're positive about what you've already done, it will lead to positive thoughts about what is coming up. One naturally follows the other. Anytime you're worried about things down the road, take a reassuring look back down the road you've already traveled. Chances are you can hang your hat on quite a few accomplishments and milestones to build your confidence. Have you ever built a house? It sure can be a headache, can't it? Months and months of headaches and worries, right? But when it's completed, and you get to stand in that house that you worked so hard to build, do you think about the plumber who was 2 weeks behind schedule? Or do you think about how nice it is to stand in your finished house and how much you and your family are going to enjoy it? I'd say most people will forget about the plumber because the mind is filled with possibilities and positive expectations. When Solomon was able to build the temple that his father David had planned many years prior, the priests and their supporting crew brought the furniture and the Ark of the Covenant. They were finally in the new, magnificent temple. They sang songs, praised God, and thanked him, saying in 2 Chronicles 13, "For he is good, for his mercy endures forever." They were focused on enjoying the fruits of all the labor that had gotten them to this point. But they were looking back at what God had already done in their lives. He is good, not was good. And then they focused on the positivity of the future. His mercy endures forever. Because they were so focused on God in the moment, he filled the house of God so completely they had to stop what they were doing. It was awe-inspiring. In that moment, they were filled with positive expectations. So the next time you're worried about an upcoming race or a long run, remember all the positive things that had to happen in order for you to get where you are. Don't focus on the 1 or 2 bad runs you didn't finish. When you do, you're focusing on the plumber instead of the fact you have a beautiful house around you. Even worse, you're failing to look back at the times that God has delivered you from things that were much worse circumstances. Look back at all the positive things, and your mind will see all the possibilities and positive expectations on the horizon.
Man, that's a great story, Dean. I love the plumber in the house illustration.
I thought you would.
That's we need, in the building business, we need to give that story to the customers a lot of times.
Yeah, no kidding. I'll never forget when we had a swimming pool put in our backyard, and when we had it put in, and it took a couple of weeks longer than it needed to, and oh my goodness, my wife rarely loses her temper. Rarely, very rarely. I know you always like to say, and I think you just said it about David. You look where God is working and go to that place, or you've always said, where's the last place you heard God? Go back to that spot.
Yeah, if you're asking yourself, God, where are you? For me, a lot of times, that's a good indication that I may be out ahead of him, because I'm bad about that.
Yeah.
I'll get this thing or this idea, and you and I are both the same way. We've said this before. We're doers. We're doers. Let's do and then plan later. Yeah. We're the not ready, aim, fire. We're the ready, fire, aim. And we get it out of order sometimes. But a lot of times when we wonder where God is, we have to look back.
Yeah.
And it goes right along with your story.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to look in the rearview mirror and you see God, he's still back there finishing up this thing. And we need to go back to where he's at.
And there's always success back there to look at, too. And sometimes even through bad circumstances. I think about the time that, like I said, I was just talking about the time that I left that job that I had for 25 years. There were some rough moments after that happened. But I can look back at that now and go, wow, what a great opportunity that was.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same, whenever I get a chance to speak to people, kind of one of the talks that I give is called Hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah.
And, society says don't look back. Don't look back. And I say sometimes we must. And, I've heard this comment before, and actually my pastor used it on a whole series, I think last year, but talking about why the rearview mirror is smaller than the windshield.
Yeah.
If we weren't meant to look back, the rearview mirror wouldn't even be there.
That's right.
But it is there. And it's because we need to look behind us from times, but our focus needs to be on what's ahead. And
through the big windshield.
To learn from that, yeah.
Yeah. And let me just say, I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast about worriers. Worry is not of God.
Exactly.
And we've had this discussion, and most people who are worriers know it too,
Right.
But that's an important thing that we all talk about how we're wired a particular way or another. But let me give it. If you're one of those worriers who you're saying there's nothing I can do because that's just how I am. I'm just a worrier. Let me give you some reassuring words. I can tell you that I had a pretty bad temper at one time. Mm-hmm. I probably not ever shared the story here, but I could share a story where I have been not just thrown out of a baseball game that I was playing in. I was thrown out of the park because I was so bad.
You are telling on yourself.
I am. But that's who I was.
Right.
I'm not that guy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't lose my temper like that anymore. Now, do I still struggle with it occasionally? Sure I do. I don't ever go there.
Yeah.
Because God has worked on me, and He chips away a little bit at a time, and I get better every year. I'm better than the year before.
Sometimes He takes big chunks.
He does take big chunks and does it in painful
and it
ways.
Hurts. Yeah. But it's for the good.
But if you're out there and you're going, I'm just that way and there's nothing I can do about it, let me assure you that if you'll focus on trying to do better, God will help you get better. He won't do it all at once. It won't be a miracle where one day you're a worrier and the next day you're not. But I guarantee you He can take some of that worry away from you.
And you can always, because I deal with, I'm a pretty anxious person. I can be, sometimes more than not. And sometimes, and my wife has gotten to where she can recognize it. She'll see it. I mean, evidently I wear it like a costume sometimes. And she'll bring it to my attention. And when she brings it to my attention, the first thing I do is I look at my prayer life. And, man, almost 100%, I would say 100% of the time when I'm just overwhelmed with something, and that overwhelming is usually fear, stress, anxiety, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Medication can mask it, but prayer can fix it.
Yeah.
And usually when I get to that point, I can look at my prayer life and I can say, there it is. Or I can look at my time in the Word, or I can look at my quiet time that I try to have every morning. And I'm at the point now where I can see a pattern.
Yeah.
But the problem is I still slip back into it. And that is who we are.
Yeah.
We are fallible. We are sinners. We are fallen. But there's one thing that can fix it. You know, many people say that's who I am. There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
Well, there is something you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it may be who we are. It may be who you are, you know, but that's not who you have to remain. That's not who you have to keep being. There is something that can fix it.
And when you notice it, as soon as you notice it, you know where to look.
Exactly.
Yep.
And yeah, something that would have kept me tore up for days. You know, sometimes I recognize it and I go get in my prayer closet and come out immediately feeling better.
Yeah.
And I mean, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it, because I had something here recently that got me that way. Recognized my time with Christ wasn't where it was supposed to be. Got in my prayer closet, and almost immediately, it's not that the issue is gone, but I've turned it over to God.
Yeah.
And that makes all the difference in the world.
I think we need to make sure we memorialize that quote you just had, though. Medication can mask it, but prayer can fix it. I like that. I like that.
I better write that down, or you'll be stealing that from me.
Hey, if you're not a Run for God coach yet, what are you waiting for?
If you've ever participated in any sport, you've probably met a great coach. Great coaches inspire us to do more than we ever thought possible. You can be the leader that helps others achieve things they never thought possible. You, yes, you have the ability and the opportunity to be that person. All you need is a heart to help people and the ability to follow a plan. The Run for God 5K Challenge will come ready to help you inspire those around you. The step-by-step guide will direct you how to plan, pray, and train people both physically and spiritually. You can help them become more fit in their health and in their walk with Christ. Share your passion. Go to runforgod.com to find out how to inspire others to accomplish big things.
All right, we are going to have to wrap this up because this has gotten so long. We're about out of studio time.
We have too much fun. Yeah, they're about to kick us out of here.
They're going to kick us out pretty soon. So let's talk about our trivia question for this week.
Okay,
right?
before you ask the question, we're going to, if you're watching this on YouTube, this is our Run Club goodie box.
All right.
And this has a devotions book in it. It has a Run Club t-shirt in it. It has a coffee mug in it. And it's going to be free if you answer this question. If you're the first one, I almost dropped it. You got to be the first one to email dean@runforgod.com with the answer to this question, and you have to be a Run Club member. That's the only two requirements. Be the first one with the answer and be a Run Club member.
The first one to go to dean@runforgod.com.
Right, not customer service.
I have gotten a couple. I got one through Messenger this week too.
Can't do that.
It needs to be at dean@runforgod.com.
Right.
Yep. So here's this week's trivia question. Let's go to a track event. I love track and field. I know you're not a big fan of track and field. I love track and field. So we're going to talk about track and field. I know we're all distance runners, but this guy is one of my all-time favorites. There was a guy who participated in a shorter event in track and field who won more than 100 races in a row. Who was it? What was the event? And how many consecutive races did he win? And then tell us, what was the time period that covered?
I think I might know this one.
Yeah.
I may be wrong.
I'll be impressed if you know this.
But I can't win, can I?
You can't win. Nope. Dean@runforgod.com. Send it there. So here's why running is so awesome. I love running because it's a simple sport. And yet, there have been books written that are over 900 pages long. I think about the lore of running. The book is like a doorstop. It's a brick, and it's filled with tons.
Well, I mean,
of great
we said last
information.
week there was a book called The Complete Book of Running, and then the guy wrote another one.
I know. So that was about 600 pages in total between those two books, maybe 700. So there's a book called The Science of Running. It's only about how science relates to running. It's 300 pages long by Steve Magnus. So there's still things we don't know. But that's what I love about running is the act itself is very simple, but it's very complicated at the same time. So motivational thought of the week. The obsession with running is really an obsession with the potential for more and more life. I love that quote. Dr. George Sheehan has said a lot of great running quotes.
Kind of goes back to that principle that we said, the things you're going to learn from training for a marathon.
That's exactly right.
Far exceeds the sport.
Right back to couch to marathon. Yep.
Join us.
Join us. Running gives you more life. And you know what else gives you more life? Christ gives you life more abundantly. It says it in the Bible. Christ gives you more life abundantly. Running gives you more life. Is that a coincidence? I think not. Will you choose more life today? Listen, we hope you've enjoyed this episode. Again, join Run Club if you haven't done that yet. Be a part of what we're doing. We just talked about this big thing we've got coming up next year. It's really ambitious. We would love to have thousands of people join us. We would love to.
I would love to call Disney and say, we've got 1,000 people coming to Orlando next January. Think about the statement that would make in that race.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Think about that. We're going to have some kind of shirt for that race, and it's going to be bright, and it's going to have scripture on the back. Think about the statement that can make to the running world.
Man, that'll be...
Gives me goosebumps.
Yes, it does. That's fantastic. So go out there, do all the things. Check out our podcast and make sure that you're subscribed so you get it every week. And give us reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Send us messages. Now, may God bless every step of every run. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.